When we finally moved into our new house, I thought we had arrived at the life we always wanted. I remember the exact day. It was a warm Saturday morning in late spring, the kind of day when the breeze smells like cut grass and promise. The moving truck pulled away just after noon, and Rachel stood on the front porch barefoot, holding a mug of coffee in both hands, like she was anchoring herself to the moment. "This feels right," she said softly, staring out over the neatly trimmed lawns of our new neighborhood. "Like we're finally home." I smiled, because it did feel right. We had spent nearly a decade grinding away, paying off debts, putting aside every bonus, every tax return, every Christmas envelope from my folks, just so we could leave behind the noise of the city and give Eli the kind of childhood that looked like it belonged in storybooks. We settled in quickly. Eli started school at the local elementary. Rachel picked up remote work with her marketing firm. I kept commuting into the city 3 days a week. And in the evenings, we'd sit on the back deck, watching the sun dip behind the oak trees while Eli played in the yard, barefoot and wild like a boy should be. For the first time in years, life didn't feel like a struggle. Felt soft. That's when we met the neighbors, Mark and Jenna McAllister. They lived in the house just to our left with their 2 daughters, both a few years older than Eli, both already riding their bikes like pros. Mark introduced himself the same day we moved in, walking over with a 6-pack of beer in one hand and a toolbox in the other. "Figured you'd either need a cold drink or a wrench. Maybe both," he laughed. He had one of those magnetic personalities, laid back, charming in that disarming, everyone's favorite uncle kind of way. Jenna, on the other hand, was more polished. She had the PDA smile, the perfect posture, the energy of someone who always remembered your birthday and the name of your dog. They were welcoming, helpful. In a neighborhood full of closed garages and trimmed hedges, the McAllisters made us feel like we belonged. Rachel and Jenna hit it off right away. I'd come home to see them chatting across the fence or laughing together while the kids played in the sprinklers. And Mark, well, he became my unofficial weekend buddy. He helped me fix the loose step on the deck, lent me a ladder when I needed to clean out the gutters. We even started watching football on Sunday nights with beer and bad takeout. Before long, it felt like we were all one big extended family. We hosted joint barbecues in the backyard, fire pits in the fall, movie nights when the kids had sleepovers. Rachel loved planning the little details, what snacks to serve, which string lights to hang, where the foldable chairs should go. And Mark? He'd always jump in to help, teasing her playfully when she got too type-a about the marshmallow roasting. First, I found it funny, charming even. They had this banter that reminded me of siblings. Joking, quick-witted, harmless. I never thought twice about it. But looking back now, there were moments, fleeting, small, but they stand out to me like cracks in glass. One night, during a backyard cookout, Mark made a comment, half laughing, half serious, as Rachel handed him a second plate of ribs. "If you ever get tired of being married to a software guy, Rachel," he grinned, "you've got options right next door." The group laughed. I laughed too. Rachel rolled her eyes in that overdone way that said, "Oh, please." But something about the way she looked down at her drink right after stuck with me. Then came the times I'd walk into the kitchen and find them talking. Just the two of them. Rachel leaning against the counter, Mark sitting a little too casually on the stool, like he belonged there. Their voices would drop as I entered, just enough to notice. And then there were the favors. He'd stop by when I wasn't home, just to return a book or ask Rachel about the bake sale. She'd tell me about it afterward, offhandedly, like it was no big deal. Still, I didn't think much of it. Not really, because I trusted her. Because I believed that what we had, our late-night talks, our shared goals, our little family, was stronger than any of those passing moments. But I also know now, betrayal doesn't happen like an explosion. It seeps in like water under the floorboards, quiet, unnoticed, until everything starts to rot beneath your feet. One day, I got home early from work. Rain had canceled my meetings, and I thought I'd surprise Rachel and pick up Eli from school. When I walked into the house, it was quiet, too quiet. No keys on the hook, no laptop on the dining table. I called her phone, no answer. I looked out the front window and there she was, on Mark's porch, sitting with him on the steps, knees angled toward each other, smiling. Not just politely, not like neighbors, like something more. I didn't say anything that day. I didn't barge over or cause a scene. I just watched for a moment, feeling something inside me go still. She came home an hour later, humming, carrying a Tupperware of extra cookies Jenna had given her. When I asked about her day, she smiled, said it was quiet, nothing special, and I smiled back, but something in me had already shifted. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing the smallest changes. Rachel began dressing up more, even on days when she was supposedly just working from home. She wore the perfume she used to save for date nights. She started going for walks in the early evenings without Eli, without me. I'd ask, "Everything okay?" And she'd reply with a smile that felt too practiced. Of course, why wouldn't it be? That's the thing about emotional distance. It doesn't come with slamming doors or shouted arguments. It comes with silence, with soft lies, with the space between your bodies in bed growing just a little wider each night. And I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid, because admitting something was wrong would mean facing a truth I wasn't ready to hold. We still had dinners together. We still laughed with Eli, still cleaned the house on Sundays like everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. It was performative, like we were actors in a play we didn't audition for, saying our lines, pretending not to notice the stage lights dimming. And still, every time I looked across the fence and saw Mark waving, beer in hand, easy smile on his face, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, a knot I couldn't name, a knot I didn't want to believe had a reason. But deep down, something inside me already knew. Because when you truly love someone, you can feel the moment they start loving someone else. Even if they haven't said a word. Even if they swear they never would. I think that's the hardest part. Not the lies. Not the betrayal. But how long you keep pretending you don't see it. Because facing the truth would mean admitting that the life you worked so hard to build wasn't as real as you thought. They say when something is wrong, you just know. But that's not true. At least not in the beginning. First, it's not a roar. It's a whisper. Not a slap in the face, but a shiver in the chest. And it doesn't scream, "She's cheating." It just quietly asks, "Why does something feel off?" And that's exactly how it began. It started with the small things. The things you'd never notice unless you're paying attention. And even then, you second-guess yourself. Rachel began going out more. Not in some dramatic, neon light kind of way, but in these small, justifiable errands. Oh, Jenna asked if I could stop by and check on their cat while they're away. Mark said he had a spare part for the hose. Thought I'd grab it real quick. Just heading over to return a Tupperware. It was always something casual, something neighborly, something that sounded like the kind of thing a good person would do. And she was a good person, or at least that's what I held on to. But these errands started to feel too frequent, too convenient. And then came the other signs, the ones that don't shout, but leave scratches on your sense of peace. She started keeping her phone face down. Always. Dinner. On the couch. Even when she was just walking through the kitchen. I remember asking her once, "Why's your phone always flipped?" She looked up, just for a second too long. "Just habit," she shrugged, brushing it off with a smile. Notifications are annoying. Maybe it was the way she said it. Maybe it was the way she didn't say anything else. But from that moment on, the silence around her phone was louder than any sound in the room. She also became distant. Not in a dramatic, icy cold way. It was more like someone slowly turning down the volume on a song you both used to dance to. We'd sit on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, watching our favorite shows. But she stopped laughing at the jokes. Her replies to my stories from work became shorter, less curious. And when I asked about her day, she'd give me that same polite smile, like someone at a customer service desk. Kind, but detached. Fine. Nothing new. Same old stuff. And then she'd go back to scrolling, or cleaning something that didn't need cleaning, or staring off through the window like she was waiting for something to happen. She stopped making eye contact when I kissed her goodnight. She stopped reaching for my hand first. I told myself it was just stress, work pressure, parenting fatigue, the monotony of suburban life. But deep down, a different voice had started to whisper, "She's slipping away from you." One night, I couldn't sleep. I got up around 1:30 a.m. and came down to grab a glass of water. And there she was, in the living room, curled up on the far end of the couch, her phone dimly lit in her hand. I watched her for a few seconds, unnoticed. She wasn't just scrolling aimlessly. She was typing, smiling. The kind of smile you save for someone who still makes your heart race. Cleared my throat. She jumped, locked the screen instantly. Too fast. "Oh, couldn't sleep," she said quickly. "Just reading something." Her voice had a tremble in it, even though she tried to sound casual. She got up, walked past me, and kissed my cheek on her way to the stairs. It was a mechanical kiss, like handing someone a receipt. And as she walked away, I stood there holding my glass of water, feeling like I was watching a stranger leave my house. That was the night I started noticing more than just her behavior. I started noticing my own. How I was walking on eggshells around her. How I was afraid to ask questions. Scared I'd sound jealous or worse, paranoid. How I was analyzing everything she said like it was a puzzle I didn't have all the pieces for. I started checking her expressions when she talked, watching her when she wasn't looking, trying to remember what our laughter used to sound like. And the scariest part? I missed her, even though she was sitting right next to me. There was this one afternoon, a Tuesday, I think. I had left work early and picked Eli up from school. We stopped for ice cream, just the two of us, and then came home. I walked into the house quietly, not expecting to catch anything, but maybe hoping I would. The living room was empty, but I heard something, soft voices, coming from the kitchen. I took one step closer and heard laughter. Hers. Then his, Mark's voice. My stomach turned cold. I stepped into view, forcing a smile, pretending I wasn't holding my breath. "Oh, hey," she said, surprised. "Didn't hear you come in." Mark smiled too, raising a hand in casual greeting. Was just dropping off that gardening book I told her about. It sounded believable. It looked normal, except it wasn't, because Rachel's cheeks were flushed. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And the air in that kitchen had the same tension as a paused movie scene. Something just out of frame. Something I wasn't supposed to see. That night, I opened her phone. I know how it sounds. But when you're drowning in uncertainty, you'll grasp at anything. Even guilt. She changed her passcode. I didn't ask about it. I didn't accuse her. But I knew she had never changed it before. Not once in all these years. So I sat on the edge of the bed, in the dark, staring at the ceiling. And the whisper came again, louder this time. "She's hiding something." It wasn't long before even the neighbors began to feel different. Jenna stopped coming around. Her waves turned into nods. And once, I saw her glance at Rachel, then quickly look away, as if she knew something she didn't want to carry. Everything in our world began to shift, ever so slightly. Conversations became shorter. Interactions more cautious. And me? I became a ghost in my own home. I'd watch her, laughing into her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd feel her lying beside me in bed, a body without warmth. And every day, I kept asking myself the same question. Am I going crazy? Because when someone you love changes, but won't tell you why, you start to question everything, including yourself. And yet, I didn't confront her, because some part of me still hoped I was wrong. Still believed that if I just held on tighter, things would go back to the way they were. Because confronting her meant risking the possibility that the life I built, the woman I trusted, the family I protected, was already halfway gone. So I stayed quiet, and she kept drifting. But that's the thing about silence. It doesn't protect you from the truth. It only delays it. And the truth? It was getting closer. They say when your heart breaks, it makes a sound. I didn't believe that, until the moment mine did. And the sound was silence. The kind that drips like cold water down your spine. The kind that hangs in the air after the world you knew collapses into something unrecognizable. I never meant to spy on my wife. I installed the camera for safety, just a cheap outdoor motion sensor unit I mounted near the back patio after someone in the neighborhood had a package stolen off their porch. It wasn't even connected to my phone at first. Just a little box recording clips onto a local drive. Out of sight, out of mind, until one day, I came home early from work. It was raining. I was soaked and tired, ready to crawl into bed. Rachel wasn't home, said she was out running errands. I made dinner for Eli, helped him with his puzzles, and eventually sat down to catch up on some bills. And that's when I remembered I needed to clear the security footage archive. The memory was getting full. I opened the folder like I had a dozen times before, scanned through the clips, mostly squirrels, the mailman, leaves rustling. But then, there was one from earlier that afternoon. 12:41 p.m. Motion detected. Back door. I clicked it, and what I saw will never leave me. The footage was grainy, in black and white, but clear enough. I saw my wife, Rachel, step out from the left side of the screen, holding her phone. She glanced around briefly, then walked briskly toward the back patio door. And right behind her was Mark, not holding a toolbox, not dropping off a book, but walking close behind her. Too close, like he had every right to. Rachel unlocked the back door, let him in, and they both disappeared into the house. The timestamp showed they were inside for almost 3 hours. 3 hours. He said, frozen, staring at the screen like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Like this was a movie, a nightmare, something that couldn't possibly belong to me, but it did. At first, I tried to reason with it. Maybe she needed help with something in the house. Maybe Jenna was with them just off camera. Maybe, but deep down I already knew, because I saw her face, just before they entered the house. She turned to him, smiled. Not the smile she gave me when she was being polite, or the one she used when Eli told her a knock-knock joke, but a smile full of warmth, comfort, and something else. It was the smile of someone letting go. I opened the next clip and saw them leaving. 2:58 p.m. Rachel stepped out first, adjusting her hair. Mark followed a moment later. She said something to him, he laughed. She touched his arm lightly before they parted ways. That was it. No nudity, no caught-in-the-act drama. But somehow it was worse, because what I saw wasn't lust. It was familiarity. It was intimacy. And intimacy, I've learned, is a language more brutal than any act of physical betrayal. I didn't move for 20 minutes, just stared at the screen, the rain tapping against the windows like a slow metronome to my unraveling. I replayed it again, and again, and again. I needed to feel it, all of it, the shame, the rage, the grief. I wanted the pain to be real enough to wake me up from whatever this was. But it wasn't a dream. This was my life, and my wife had given a part of herself to another man in the house we built together. Our son's toys in the living room, our photos on the wall, my clothes still hanging in the closet. And somewhere in that house, they had touched each other. You might think I screamed, threw things, called her immediately, but no, what I felt wasn't fire. It was ice, a slow, paralyzing cold that made everything inside me go still. Because when your world collapses, there's a moment, just before the ruin sets in, where time stops, and all you can do is feel it. When Rachel came home later that evening, she acted like nothing had happened. She walked in, called out for Eli, kissed the top of my head as she passed behind the couch, and I sat there, motionless, watching her like a stranger. She laughed when Eli ran to her with his drawings, complimented the dinner I made, told me about a conversation she had with a coworker. She was normal, too normal, and I wanted to scream, "How do you look at me like that? How do you lie so easily with my name still on your lips?" But I didn't. I waited, because I needed to be sure, not just of what happened, but who she had become. That night, when she went to bed, I stayed downstairs. I pulled up more footage. Not just from that day, but from weeks before. And like a puzzle unraveling in reverse, I started seeing the pattern. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, afternoons where I thought she was at Target or walking in the park. She wasn't. She was here, with him. Sometimes they'd meet outside. Sometimes she'd let him in quickly, cautiously, but always with that same look, a blend of excitement and guilt she hadn't decided to acknowledge. I watched one clip where Mark brushed her hair from her face before walking inside, and she tilted her head into his palm. That single gesture, tender, quiet, broke me, because I used to be the only one she let touch her like that. And then, I heard it. I found an audio recording. Not intentional. Just background audio the camera had picked up when the window was slightly open during one of their visits. It wasn't clear, but I could hear them. Laughter. Low voices. A moan. A whisper, her voice, saying his name. Not Mark, but something softer, like a nickname. I shut the laptop so fast it nearly fell from my lap. Couldn't breathe, because that sound, that small, innocent, intimate sound, was more violent than any scream. What made it worse was the realization that she had chosen this. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken accident. It was consistent. It was intentional. And somehow, she was still coming home, eating dinner with me, tucking our son into bed, kissing me goodnight, with his fingerprints still on her skin. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the ceiling, counting every moment I had been blind, every sign I dismissed, every lie I accepted. And still, part of me didn't want to believe it, because once you accept the truth, you can never go back to before. I didn't sleep that night, not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't, because sleep felt like surrender, and I wasn't ready to let go of the illusion I'd been living in. Not yet. So I lay there, eyes wide open, listening to the sound of Rachel breathing beside me, soft, even, untroubled. She slept like someone who had made peace with her sins, or worse, like someone who no longer felt them. By morning, I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. There was no rage boiling in my chest, no fantasy of revenge playing behind my eyes. There was just a kind of stillness, a terrible, absolute quiet, like the silence after an explosion. And that silence followed me into the kitchen, where I found her pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the blue one with the chipped rim that she refused to throw out, the one I had bought for her on our second anniversary. She turned to me and smiled. Sleep still clung to her eyes, her hair slightly messy. She looked normal, too normal. "Want some?" she asked, lifting the pot. I looked at her for a long, aching moment, and then I said quietly, "How long has it been going on?" Her hand froze mid-air. The pot tilted just slightly, a single drop of coffee splashing onto the counter. She didn't respond. I didn't push, didn't yell, didn't cry. I just repeated, softer this time, more like a statement than a question. "I know about you and Mark." She blinked, slowly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She didn't ask what I was talking about. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, staring at the counter like she couldn't bear to meet my eyes. That was when I knew, for certain. I waited. I wanted her to speak, to explain, to apologize, to say anything. But she didn't. She just placed the pot down, wiped the drop of coffee with a napkin, and finally, after what felt like years, she said, barely above a whisper, "I didn't mean for it to happen." And that was it. The cliché, the script, the same sentence uttered in 1,000 broken homes before mine. I didn't mean for it to happen, as if love was a car accident, as if betrayal was just a slip of the hand. I looked at her, and for the first time in months, really saw her. Not the woman I fell in love with, not the mother of my child, not the partner I built a life with, but someone else, someone I didn't recognize. Her eyes were glassy, but there were no tears. Her voice cracked, but there was no fight in it. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was just sorry she got caught. I didn't ask for details. I already had more than I needed. I didn't ask her if she loved him. Because I knew that answer would break me more than the silence already had. I didn't even ask her why, because in that moment no reason would have mattered. No excuse could soften the blade already lodged in my chest. I walked past her, went upstairs, packed a small duffel bag with a few shirts, my toothbrush, my laptop. Nothing more. She followed me halfway up the stairs. "Daniel, wait," she said softly, reaching out as if to stop me. I paused, not because I wanted to stay, but because some foolish, battered part of me still wanted her to beg, to fall apart, to break open the way she had broken me. But she didn't. Her hand hung in the air, hesitant, unsure, and then fell back to her side. So I kept walking. When I left the house, the sun was just starting to rise. The sky was this soft, bleeding pink. Birds chirped. The neighborhood was still. Mark's house was quiet, curtains drawn, lights off. I stood on the driveway for a long time, not looking back at the house, but trying to remember the last time it had felt like a home. And I couldn't, because once betrayal takes root, it rewrites everything. The couch becomes the place she laughed with someone else. The hallway becomes the road to their secrets. The bedroom, a battlefield. Nothing stays untouched, not even the air. Over the next few days, I stayed in a motel by the highway. Cheap, bland, anonymous. I told Eli I had to go on a work trip, and Rachel didn't contradict me. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't come looking, and maybe that hurt more than the cheating itself. Not because I wanted her back, but because her silence confirmed what I already feared. She had already let me go, long before I ever walked out the door. Mark never reached out. Not a message, not a knock on my door, not even an apology. The house next door went dark. Curtains always closed. Jenna stopped waving. The girls didn't play outside anymore. They had gone into hiding, and I couldn't blame them, because guilt, real guilt, doesn't always show itself with tears or confessions. Sometimes it just hides. A few weeks later, I filed for divorce. Rachel signed the papers without protest. We sat across from each other at the mediator's office like two strangers. Two people who had once built a life together, now negotiating its funeral. She wore a gray sweater I'd bought her years ago. She looked tired, smaller somehow, but not broken. Maybe she had broken long before I ever noticed. That night, I returned to the motel and cried for the first time. Not loudly, not violently, just quietly, like something had died inside me, and I was the only one attending the burial. But here's the strangest thing. In the silence that followed, in the ache of being alone, in the mornings where I woke up not knowing who I was anymore, I began to find something else. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. You see, sometimes the most painful truths don't destroy us. They reveal us. They burn away the illusion, the comfort, the lies we tell ourselves just to get through the day. And what's left, once the fire passes, is something honest, raw, and unbearably real. I was broken, but I was no longer blind. I don't hate her. I thought I would. I wanted to, but I don't, because hating her would mean I still held on to her. And I'm learning, slowly, painfully, to let go. Not for her, not even for Eli, but for me, because the life I deserve, the love I deserve, won't be built on silence and shame. Maybe the truth did break me, but maybe, just maybe, it's also how I begin to rebuild. Sometimes the loudest heartbreak is the one no one hears. It doesn't always come with slammed doors or screaming matches. Sometimes it's just the quiet clink of a coffee mug, the silence after a question goes unanswered, the space beside you in bed that used to feel like home. I didn't lose her in a single moment. I lost her in 100 silent choices, in every lie told gently, in every truth avoided, in every laugh she gave someone else while I sat in the dark. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you've been there, in that empty kitchen, in that quiet motel, wondering how everything slipped away without you noticing. If you have, you're not alone. These stories I tell, mine and others, are not just about betrayal. They're about rediscovery. about finding your voice when it's been buried beneath someone else's choices. And if this story spoke to you, if it stirred something real in your heart, then I invite you to stay. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to the channel, because there are more stories to tell. Stories of heartbreak, of healing, of the messy, beautiful ways we survive what tries to destroy us. And who knows, the next story might be the one that helps you take your next step forward.